They tried to tow my boat at 6 in the morning, on a Tuesday. That was the moment I knew the HOA had officially lost its mind. I'm Quentin Callahan, retired Coast Guard and proud owner of a 22-foot bass boat named Liberty's Wake. I keep her parked on a paved slab beside my garage, not blocking any driveways, not on the street, and well within the boundaries of my own damn property. But that didn't stop Trishan Zeller, our local HOA president and champion of misplaced authority, from showing up in her robe, coffee mug in one hand, camera in the other. "Quentin," she started, voice already loaded with fake concern, "we've had complaints about the boat. It's unsightly. Brings down the neighborhood's aesthetic." "From who?" I asked, not even bothering to look up from polishing Liberty's trailer hitch. She gave me that tight-lipped Karen smile. "I can't disclose that. But the board voted and we've decided it needs to go." "That's funny," I said, "because the HOA bylaws say nothing about boats parked on private slabs. I read the whole packet, twice." "Well," she sniffed, "we're updating the covenants. It's in progress. Until then, Trishan, Liberty stays." She didn't reply. She just took a picture of the boat and stomped off toward her golf cart, which, ironically, she parked diagonally across my lawn. I thought that was the end of it. 2 days later, I woke up to the sound of chains clanking and metal scraping. I rushed outside in my boxers to find a tow truck backing up toward Liberty. A guy in a neon vest was hooking chains to her axle. "You touch that boat and I swear I'll have your job," I barked. The tow guy held up his hands. "I got a work order from the HOA. Did you check who owns the property?" "No, sir, just doing what I was told. Unhook it, now." I had my phone out, already filming. Trishan came waddling down the street with 2 other board members, Mark and Beverly, trailing behind her like lost puppies. "You can't interfere with a lawful towing, Quentin," she called out. "Lawful? You're trespassing. And Liberty's not on HOA land." "She's on mine." "That's a matter of interpretation," she said, arms crossed. I laughed. "Only if you're blind and can't read a plat map." I made the tow guy unhook the boat. He left without another word. That's when I got serious. I pulled out the original community development plans I got from the county when I bought the place 5 years ago. That lake the HOA keeps bragging about. The one they built a gazebo and private dock on, charge residents a monthly lake maintenance fee for. Yeah. Turns out it's not on HOA-owned land. It's on mine. The developer never transferred the deed to the HOA, and when I bought my property, that lakefront parcel was included. I even pay taxes on it. The HOA's little fishing dock, their picnic tables, the paddle boat rentals they started last summer. All sitting on land they don't own. I called my lawyer. "Quentin," he said, "you've got a golden ticket here." That same day, I drafted up official eviction notices, slapped one on their dock, one on the gate to the lake, and one on their precious gazebo. Trishan showed up an hour later, holding the paper like it was covered in anthrax. "What is this?" she hissed. "It's a notice of trespass and eviction, effective in 24 hours. You've been operating on land you don't own. You've got till tomorrow to get your stuff off it. You can't do this." "I can, and I am. You'll hear from our attorney. Good, I'll save him the trip. I've already got the county assessor, the tax records, and your little HOA handbook that proves you've been collecting fees for land you don't even own." "That's fraud, Trishan." She went pale. For once, she didn't have a comeback. Just turned and walked off like a deflated balloon in flip-flops. And that was just day 1. By noon the next day, the gazebo was gone, dragged off by 3 sweaty landscapers who looked like they were regretting every life choice that led them to dismantling a pergola in 94-degree heat. The HOA dock, however, was a different story. It was still there, chained to the waterline like it had squatters' rights. I didn't push it. Yet, instead, I focused on tightening my case. My lawyer, Randall Givens, had already filed an official cease and desist with the HOA's legal counsel. While he handled the paperwork, I spent the afternoon walking the lake's perimeter, recording footage of every structure, utility hookup, and posted sign that had the HOA's name on it. They'd even installed a fish feeder on a timer, which, upon closer inspection, was wired into an electrical line buried across my yard. That was new. Randall reviewed the footage and nodded. "They're not just trespassing," he said. "They've altered the land, installed unauthorized utilities, and collected dues under false pretenses. We're 2 steps from a civil fraud case." I asked what the next step was. "You notify the county zoning office. They'll want to know someone's been operating a commercial use structure, those paddle boats, on private residential property. No permits, no inspections, that's a regulatory nightmare." So I did. 3 days later, an inspector named Gary Whitlock from the County Office of Land Use showed up with a clipboard, and a resting face like he hadn't smiled since the Clinton administration. I watched from the porch as he spent a good hour cataloging electrical boxes, utility connections, and decking materials at the lake. When he knocked on my door, I offered him a bottle of water. He declined. "You know they're drawing power from your breaker box?" he asked. "Only found out yesterday. That's an automatic code violation, and the dock's floating platform, it's anchored with rebar drilled into the lake bed. That's structural modification. They needed permits for every part of that. What happens now?" I file my report. "They'll get a notice of violation, and if they don't remove it or bring it into compliance, the county will intervene. Meaning, the dock gets condemned, and if they don't dismantle it, we'll fine them daily." I couldn't have scripted it better myself. That night, I installed 3 motion sensor lights facing the lake frontage. I wasn't taking any chances, and it's a good thing I didn't. At 2:30 in the morning, my cameras caught a man in dark clothes creeping through the brush behind my shed. He had bolt cutters. He was headed straight for the utility box near the fish feeder. I called the sheriff. Deputies arrived in under 10 minutes. They caught the guy red-handed trying to snip the main power line. He tried to run, didn't get far. Turned out he was the HOA's maintenance contractor. Name was Darryl McGowan. He confessed on the spot that Trishan had told him to disconnect anything that could get them fined. He hadn't realized he was tampering with a residential power source. The deputies arrested him for trespassing and attempted vandalism of private utilities. Darryl wasn't exactly tight-lipped either. At the station, he admitted the HOA had known for years that the lake parcel wasn't officially deeded to them. They just assumed I wouldn't notice. Randall got the full incident report the next day. "This isn't just a civil issue anymore," he said. "They knowingly used land they didn't own, charged residents for access, and now they've attempted to destroy evidence. That's criminal fraud." I didn't have to lift a finger after that. The county filed a formal complaint against the HOA for operating unpermitted recreational structures. My power company launched an investigation into the unauthorized tap, and the sheriff's office began reviewing past HOA records for signs of misuse of funds. That's when the neighborhood started noticing. People began knocking on my door, asking questions. Marcy from 3 houses down had been paying $50 a month in lake maintenance fees for 4 years. She looked like she was about to throw a lawn chair through the HOA office window. "They never said the lake wasn't theirs," she told me. "I thought I was paying for upkeep. Now I hear they've been lying about owning it. They've been using it to collect dues they had no right to," I said. "And they've been making decisions about the land without any legal authority." Marcy went straight to her Facebook group and posted a 10-paragraph manifesto. By that evening, the post had over 60 comments and a dozen screenshots of past HOA newsletters claiming exclusive property rights to the lake. The next day, the HOA tried damage control. Trishan called for an emergency board meeting at the clubhouse. I showed up early and sat in the front row. She walked in with a folder stuffed so full it looked like it might burst. Her usual smug confidence had been replaced by the sort of stiff posture people get when they're about to walk into a courtroom. "We're here to address some recent misunderstandings," she began. I stood up. "Before you start, I'd like to submit a motion to suspend the current board pending investigation into illegal use of private property and fraudulent fee collection. You're not a board member, Quentin. No, but I am the owner of the land you've been exploiting. And under Florida Statute 720, subsection 3, any resident has the right to call for a vote of no confidence if the board is under investigation for criminal conduct, which you are, as of yesterday. A buzz went through the room. Mark, one of the board members, looked like he'd swallowed a thumbtack. Beverly stared at her shoes. Trishan tried to recover. This meeting is not official. The agenda wasn't distributed 72 hours in advance. Then I guess we'll just wait until the sheriff finishes auditing your fee collections, I said. But in the meantime, I've already filed a motion with the county to revoke your recreational license. That's assuming you even had one. I walked out before she could answer. By the end of the week, the HOA's bank account was frozen pending audit. Residents started organizing to form a new oversight committee. The county posted a condemnation notice on the dock, warning of steep fines for non-compliance. And a local news station sent a crew to interview me about the HOA that tried to tow a boat and lost a lake. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The pictures spoke for themselves. Trishan standing beside a condemned floating dock, her clipboard hanging useless at her side as the county began dismantling the structure piece by piece. Liberty's wake sat gleaming in the sunlight, right where she belonged. By the following week, the neighborhood had officially turned. Yard signs started popping up like mushrooms after rain, bright red ones reading "Audit the HOA" and "No more fake fees." Someone even staked one right in front of the clubhouse entrance. Not me. I didn't need to fan the flames. The truth was doing it on its own. The county's condemnation of the dock had triggered an avalanche. Without warning, the HOA lost their insurance coverage for recreational facilities. Their policy required proof of ownership for any land with public access structures. No deed, no coverage. Their provider dropped them like a hot coal. That meant no liability protection. If someone so much as tripped on a loose plank, the HOA would be on the hook personally. That same day, I got a knock at my door. It was Deputy Marshal Lillian Cords, tall with steel gray eyes and a badge that looked like it had seen its share of courtroom testimonies. "Mr. Callahan," she said, "we've opened a formal investigation into the HOA under Title 36, Chapter 9. Fraud, unauthorized use of private property, and unlicensed construction." "About time," I said, stepping aside to let her in. She didn't take a seat, just flipped open a weathered notebook and started asking questions, very specific ones. "Have you ever received written notice from the HOA requesting permission to use your land?" "No." "Did you ever sign any easement, access agreement, or maintenance contract giving them rights?" "Nothing." "Not even a phone call?" "Do you have the tax records showing the lakefront parcel is under your name?" "I've got copies of every year since I bought the place. County assessor signed off on it last month." She nodded once. "We've already interviewed the contractor who claimed he was hired to destroy electrical infrastructure. And we've subpoenaed the HOA's financials. If they used dues to maintain facilities on property they don't own, that crosses into felony territory." Deputy Marshal Cords left with a copy of my parcel survey and a flash drive containing video footage from my outdoor cameras. Less than 48 hours later, subpoenas were served to every current board member. The sheriff's office escorted them out of the clubhouse in front of a line of neighbors holding cell phones. The silence was louder than any shouting match could have been. Beverly was crying. Mark held a manila folder to his chest like a shield. Trishan refused to make eye contact with anyone. I watched from my porch, arms folded. I didn't wave. The county sheriff gave a press statement that evening. Allegations of financial misconduct, unauthorized land use, and criminal misrepresentation were under active review. Until further notice, the HOA board was suspended. A provisional neighborhood committee would be appointed by a vote of the homeowners. All HOA expenditures were frozen. That's when the real cleanup began. With the board gone, residents started digging. Marcy and her husband Bruce, he's a retired IRS auditor, got hold of past financial statements and did a forensic review. What they found blew the doors off the whole operation. Over the past 3 years, the HOA had collected nearly $90,000 in lake improvement fees. But only a fraction of that showed up in the official budget. The rest redirected to an unlisted expense account labeled Community Enrichment. According to the bank statements, that account had paid for a conference trip to Las Vegas, a monthly catering contract from a restaurant owned by Beverly's cousin, and a pair of luxury recliners for the HOA office. Bruce compiled everything into a report and submitted it to the prosecutor's office. Meanwhile, I got a certified letter from the HOA's legal counsel. It was a settlement proposal. They offered me a $5,000 goodwill payment if I agreed to drop the trespassing claims and stop speaking to the press. I sent it back with 2 words written across it in red Sharpie: not interested. The local news ran a follow-up story. This time they brought a drone. The footage showed the now empty lakefront, dock removed, gazebo gone, fish feeder dismantled. They zoomed in on the warning signs posted by the county and added a headline that read, "Boat Battle Sparks Massive HOA Fraud Probe." After that, people started showing up with questions. Not just residents, reporters, real estate attorneys, even 2 city council aides. One of them, a sharp-dressed woman named Alana with a clipboard and a Bluetooth earpiece, asked to walk the lake border with me. "Mr. Callahan, we've had complaints about this HOA before," she said. "But nothing with this much documentation. If you're willing, the council would like you to testify at the upcoming Housing Oversight Panel." "I'll do it," I said. "But I want them barred from holding office again anywhere in the county. If the investigation supports it, we'll make that happen." The hearing was scheduled for the following month. In the meantime, the neighborhood held an emergency vote to replace the entire HOA structure. Not just the board, everything. The residents voted to dissolve the HOA's corporate charter and reclassify the community as a voluntary association. With the charter voided, the HOA lost all authority to enforce fines, collect dues, or regulate property. They were, for all legal purposes, a memory. But the consequences didn't stop there. 3 weeks later, the district attorney's office filed formal charges against Trishan, Mark, and Beverly. Wire fraud, misappropriation of funds, conspiracy to commit theft. The evidence from Bruce's audit and Marshall Cords's investigation was airtight. The grand jury returned indictments without a hitch. The best part: the fraudulent lake fees had been funneled through a bank account registered under the HOA's tax ID, but the account had been opened by Trishan personally. That meant she was directly liable. Her face showed up on every ATM withdrawal, every receipt. Her signature was on the maintenance contracts for land she didn't own. She was booked and released on bond. Her mugshot was plastered all over town. Someone printed it on T-shirts. At the council hearing, I brought a USB drive with time-stamped video clips, land surveys, and the full parcel history from the county assessor's office. I laid it all out clean. No drama, just facts. When I was done, the panel thanked me for exposing a systemic failure of oversight and accountability. They passed a motion to create a municipal watchdog for all HOAs in the county, quarterly audits, random inspections, mandatory public access to financial records. The council aide found me afterward. "You just rewrote the book on how to dismantle a corrupt HOA," she said. I nodded. "All because they tried to tow my boat." Liberty's wake still sat exactly where she'd always been on her slab, clean, covered, and untouched. But now she was more than a fishing vessel. She was a monument to what happens when you read every page, check every map, and don't let bullies bluff their way past the law. Quiet return to the neighborhood. No more clipboard patrols. No more fake citations. People waved again. Kids rode bikes without getting scolded for sidewalk chalk. The lake was calm, no longer policed by arbitrary rules or phony dues. And every morning I walked outside, coffee in hand, leaned against Liberty's trailer and breathed deep. Freedom didn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it came with paperwork, patience, and a boat they never should have touched. A week after the indictments, the sheriff's office moved in to seize the HOA office assets. Not just the usual stuff: computers, files, records, but also the leased vehicle Trishan had registered under emergency HOA operations. It was a luxury SUV with heated seats and a built-in espresso machine. She'd used HOA funds to make the down payment. The county investigator assigned to the fraud case, a no-nonsense man named Ellis Corbin, told me during a follow-up interview that the lease's purpose had been listed as infrastructure response vehicle. The only thing she responded to, he said, was brunch. By then, the temporary oversight committee had taken full control of neighborhood affairs. I wasn't technically part of it, but they kept me in the loop. After all, I was the property owner whose land had been at the center of it all. They even asked to hold their first open meeting in my backyard, Liberty, in full view. I agreed on one condition. No folding chairs with embroidered HOA logos, I said. Bad memories. They laughed, but they understood. At the meeting, residents brought folding tables covered in homemade lemonade, cookies, and a stack of petitions. One of them, a retired public defender named Joanne Lynn, proposed a full restitution plan. We've identified every resident charged fraudulent lake fees going back 5 years, she said, pointing to a spreadsheet. The total comes to just over $83,000. Once the court releases the frozen assets, we'll begin issuing reimbursements. A ripple of applause followed. Bruce, the former IRS auditor, chimed in next. We also discovered the HOA was charging late fees on dues that were never approved by vote. Those are being nullified. Everyone's balance is being reset to zero. For the first time in months, it felt like the neighborhood was breathing again. But the final blow came 2 days later when federal agents arrived. Turns out, Trishan had been doing more than misusing HOA dues. She'd filed for a federal community grant 2 years ago, claiming the HOA was managing a public conservation greenbelt. She attached altered property maps she'd photoshopped using county PDFs to make it appear that the lake and surrounding land were community-owned. On that basis, she'd received a one-time payment of $25,000 earmarked for ecosystem preservation and public access restoration. In reality, she'd used the money to renovate the HOA office new flooring, smart thermostat, and a private coffee bar with imported beans. Ellis Corbin called me the morning after the agents went public. She crossed into federal fraud, he said. That's a different animal. Dodge's involved now. They're reviewing every application she's submitted in the past 5 years. Later that day, I watched from my front porch as 2 black SUVs with government plates pulled up to her house. The agents walked in without knocking. She came out 20 minutes later wearing sandals and a sun hat, wrists cuffed in front of her. She was loaded into the back seat without a word. The neighborhood was silent except for the cicadas. No one waved. The next morning, Randall, my lawyer, called with another update. They've offered a plea deal. If she cooperates and identifies everyone involved in the grant application scheme, she'll serve a reduced sentence, but she's still looking at several years. Good, I said. She earned it. He paused. You know, you could sue the HOA as a private entity. For trespassing, unauthorized utility use, and emotional distress. You'd probably win. I don't need the money, I said. I just want the land returned to peace. And it was. The lakefront, once cluttered with picnic tables and paddle boats, now sat quiet and still. The county removed the last remnants of the old infrastructure and posted an official sign. Private property. Access restricted. I planted native grasses along the shoreline, built a small wooden bench facing the water. Liberty stayed where she'd always been, but I added a new plaque to her trailer. You don't own what you didn't earn. The residents came together in unexpected ways. Without an HOA breathing down their necks, they started organizing their own maintenance days. Volunteers mowed shared spaces, cleaned up sidewalks, and even repainted the neighborhood welcome sign. Bruce and Joanne formed a volunteer finance committee to ensure transparency moving forward. They published every transaction online, password protected, but accessible to all residents. The site included scanned receipts, meeting minutes, and action logs. Marcy started a community garden near the old clubhouse. Not on my land this time, on a plot donated by another neighbor who'd been inspired by the whole ordeal. They named it Liberty Patch. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the lake turned gold, Mark showed up at my door. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like he'd aged 10 years. "I was wrong," he said. "I followed because I didn't want to rock the boat. You ended up helping her sink it," he nodded. "I know. I'm working with the prosecutor now. I've turned over all my emails and meeting notes. I let him speak. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't deserve it yet." But he left saying he was going to testify truthfully at the sentencing hearing. When that day came, the courtroom was packed with neighbors. The judge listened patiently to every victim impact statement. Marcy read hers calmly, recounting how the fraudulent fees had forced her to cut medication costs for her husband's heart condition. Joanne spoke next, pointing out how Trishan's actions had weaponized bureaucracy against working families. Then the judge turned to Trishan. "You abused a position of trust. You manipulated documents, misled your community, and diverted resources for personal gain. This wasn't incompetence. This was intentional." She was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison with eligibility for parole after 3. She was also ordered to pay restitution for the grant fraud and the misused HOA funds. When the gavel fell, no one clapped. No one cheered. But when we stepped outside, there was a collective exhale, like a storm had finally passed. Back home, I walked the lake's edge under a sky full of stars. The air was clean. No sirens, no construction, no HOA patrols rolling through like mall cops with too much caffeine. Just the sound of frogs and the ripple of water against the bank. I sat on the bench I'd built and ran my fingers along the wood grain, thinking about how close the whole place had come to falling apart. All because someone thought they could bluff their way into power. But power without principle is like a boat without a rudder, it goes nowhere good. Liberty's wake rested in the soft glow of the yard light. I'd added a new coat of wax the day before, and she gleamed like polished stone. A neighbor walked by with his dog, gave me a nod, and kept going. Peaceful, quiet, exactly how it should be. Later, Randall sent me a final email. The county had closed the investigation. The neighborhood was officially listed as self-managed, non-governing. No more dues. No more boards, just people living side by side. I clicked the email closed. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the reeds. I stood, stretched, and gave Liberty a pat on the hull. "Well," I said to no one in particular, "guess we showed 'em what happens when you try to tow the wrong boat."